to the TradeInformer Podcast. Today we're talking to two people who I think a lot of people watching or listening will be familiar with. We have Mike Logue, who recently left his role at IG Group, and Andy Francos, who has worked at a couple of brokers and been consulting on SEO for a while now. So Mike, do you want to start by introducing yourself? And then Andy, you can give an intro to yourself and also just talk about what your new product and company is.
Yeah, thanks, David, for having both of us on and for giving us a chance to talk to your audience about Obsero. If I briefly just touch on my background, I spent the last 15 years building and leading analytics, marketing, and product functions within fintech. As you mentioned, I left IG earlier this year. And for the past 3-4 months, Andy and I have been working together to build the product that we're going to be talking to you about today, and super excited to do so. Over to you, Andy.
Thanks, David, for having me on. So yeah, I'm Andy. I started in organic growth around 2006 and saw so much transformation over the years from desktop to mobile, algorithms updating in Google, Panda, Penguin. We've seen the rise and fall of voice search. And now we are in the era of AI search, and me and Mike were delighted to come together to roll out this product, Obsero, which is an AI search intelligence platform. So there is a lot of experience and understanding of what marketeers and technologists want to see from this type of service. And in terms of my previous roles, I worked at IG Group, which is, as Mike said, where we met each other. I was the head of SEO there. I'd worked previously at a media agency, heading up the P&G account. And I also worked at Kazoo, taking from seed to IPO in 2021 as part of the organic growth function. So yeah, fantastic to be here. And thanks a lot for having us.
Yeah, no problem. And I've had a run through of the platform. I think it's really interesting. But maybe Mike, could you just talk through very simply what Obsero, if that's the correct pronunciation, actually does?
Yeah. So really simply, Obsero is an intelligence platform for AI search. So we help brands understand their visibility and sentiment today on the likes of ChatGPT, Claude, Google's AI mode. Understand what's driving that visibility and that sentiment, and ultimately help them understand how to grow their visibility and discoverability through LLMs. There's two sides to the business. One is the platform, which, David, as you said, you've walked through, and we're super excited to bring that to market next week, and super happy with how that's looking at this point. On top of that, Obsero also offers a consulting service to work with brands to use our platform, use the data that we've captured, use the insight that sits within the platform to put a GEO growth plan together, help them boost their visibility through deploying GEO tactics, which obviously with Andy's background in organic growth and my background in analytics, we're pretty well placed to do. So that's the crux of it, and we're super excited to bring it to market next week.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think the interesting thing for me was just that people are talking so much about AI changing SEO, changing search, changing marketing. But this was the first time I've really seen a platform of how you can visualize that, because it feels like the change has come, but the way of capturing that change has maybe not really come fully yet until guys like you have come to market. But yeah,
and that was I guess that's the genesis of where the business came from. So when Andy and I started speaking about this back in, I guess, March, April of this year, we started discussing the opportunity. We were both pretty stunned at the lack of understanding marketeers had of how the AI search transformation was impacting the business. And we got talking to why don't people understand what's going on, and it came to that lack of data and analytics and insight. There aren't tools that exist today, at least not very many good ones, that help brands understand what's going in within the AI search space. And so we thought it was a very obvious thing for us to go and try and fill that gap.
Yeah, and I appreciate you both of you probably won't be able to share too much granular detail or specifics about what changes you've been seeing, but obviously you made this product on the back of stuff you were seeing day to day in your previous roles and working at companies in-house. Can you sort of talk through what those changes were like? Like what were the sort of things or trends that you were seeing over, let's say, the last 18 to 24 months since ChatGPT came to market. Was it 3 years? I can't remember at this point. I think it's like 2 years.
It was Q4 of 2022. And I think that was the explosion where people started to realize that this could be another way to discover information, which is essentially what this is about, right? It's not SEO versus GEO, so generative engine optimization, or the other acronym that gets thrown out is answer engine optimization. It's about how customers and your audience discover information. And what we've seen is obviously ChatGPT's rise, Google combating that with AIOs. So you would have seen this at the top of a Google listing when you do a search, usually informational in terms of what would get returned. David and we covered a story a couple of months ago in terms of within the space, how much, I think it was like 49% for the category we were looking at. So this was a big change where publishers started to panic as well, because all of a sudden you started to see impressions increasing, but clicks going down. And all of a sudden publishers are giving the answer to an LLM, but they're not getting anything back from it. And that was the trade-off that we've had for like nearly 2 decades now, of you would then get some traffic back for providing this content. So, and again, linking back to what Mike had said, this was where we wanted to come in and help brands understand what their visibility is like within those LLMs, whether it be the AIOs, AI Mode, which launched in the UK a couple of weeks ago, and it's having a global rollout, started in the US. I think that will become the default search experience over time. And we will start to see clicks diminishing even more. So those brand visibility metrics that you see and how often you get cited for certain prompts is going to be essential for brands to measure success.
Yeah, no, I think it's quite interesting for me because I've never really focused on like very SEO heavy topics. So I don't feel like I've been impacted by it as badly as some other ones. You know, like if you're a real pure play SEO e-commerce style site, then, I think you might feel a bit differently. But like we'll talk about more about that in a second. I think for now, one thing I'm interested in, and it was kind of interesting running through the product actually to see sort of how this works, is it feels like AI has created this almost like a blind spot. So if you look at the past, say, 20, 25 years, I think people working in marketing have become really accustomed to having this sort of very broad oversight of their potential customers and their new customers and sort of the customer journey. So how if you're at IG Group, for example, you probably have a relatively good idea of how your customer found you, how they end up signing up with you, what they deposited, and that sort of thing. And it feels like AI has created this scenario where there's a big blind spot, right? Because if I search best Forex broker in the UK, and then I don't click through on anything, and then I just end up organically, it seems like, on the whatever broker website, you have no idea how that person has ended up finding you. So I'm sort of curious what the big blind spots are there at the moment. Like what sort of change has that caused? Do you see any sort of like, do you suddenly just have like a big group of clients where you can't get attribution on them? And obviously beyond Obsero, the amazing product, are there any sort of tools or methods that companies can use to sort of bridge that gap and get more visibility?
Yeah, so I think this actually continues a journey that marketeers have been on for the past, 3-5 years, which is less and less visibility. So if I, 5-6 years ago, I was running performance marketing globally, and I had the greatest job in the world at that point, because with cookies being as prevalent as they were, with cookie consent being as kind of mute a topic as it was at that point, we had so much visibility on the customer journey pre and into our business. And attribution was almost an exact science, or was deemed an exact science at that point, where we had really deep understanding of what was driving commercial growth and the levers we had to pull to further that commercial growth. That's changed a lot in the past 5 years since, whether that's through browsers themselves blocking third-party and in some instances first-party cookies, whether that's through cookie consent becoming more of an issue through regulatory legislation, with less and less people actually opting into third-party cookies, even in browsers that allow it. Visibility is as low now, probably even across traditional search and other traditional performance marketing channels, than it has been for decades. So marketers, I think, are, good marketeers, we're getting more and more used to having to find alternative ways to understand what was working and what wasn't. And I think AI search and zero-click searches takes that one step further, partly because of the volume of it. So much of decision making is now happening within these platforms where there is no visibility on attribution. But that's just the nature of the way that the category is going. And I say it really does continue a trend that marketers have had to deal with for a number of years. So there's two. I think there's two tools in the toolbox I think every marketer should be leaning on, and probably should have been leaning on for years now, but definitely needs to lean on in the world we're in now. The first is really doubling down on test and learn. So by running experiments, taking action and understanding the impact on your top level metrics, you can get a really deep understanding for what's working and what's not. Any marketing team that doesn't have scientists and statisticians in it is going to be struggling now, because test and learn is going to become such a pillar of how marketers understand performance. And that could be test and learn across copying content on your own website. It could be test and learn across your advertising, either your media choices or your creative choices. It could be test and learn in terms of the impact of PR on your direct and branded traffic through to your website. And when it comes to AI search, there'll be a lot of test and learn going on in terms of your referral traffic, in terms of your the way you structure your content on your own site, and understanding the impact that has on your visibility in LLMs. I guess one step further than that is understanding then the commercial impact of that visibility. That's not what Obsero is here to do. We're not here as an attribution engine that's going to help you understand the impact of improving your visibility, rankings, and sentiment on your business. There's kind of an underlying assumption that sits behind Obsero that more visibility, better sentiment, more discoverability through LLMs is a good thing, and will drive more growth for your business. We're not trying to prove that. We're working off that assumption. But yeah, I think the first thing is that test and learn has been important for a long time, predominantly on site, but is moving to be more and more important off site as well. The second thing I'm saying is this obviously depends on the size of the business, is econometric modeling is still a super important tool for marketers to use. MMMs, they kind of went out of fashion for a decade while multi-touch attribution became the thing. We've kind of gone full circle, and we've come back to a place where MMMs are a super valuable tool for marketers to use. And if you've got enough data and enough scale, then that's the other thing that I'd be using to fill the gaps that are left behind from attribution.
And I'll just add as well, with things that like brands can do as well, is ensure that they have like AI like tools set up to monitor calls. So if there is like a sales team, you can then mention, if a customer mentions ChatGPT, Claude, or Perplexity, like that is a great way to understand. And I've seen data that is showing month-on-month growth in terms of people using these tools. Small little tips as well, like even where, how did you hear about us? For years it's been search engines. You can get a bit more granular. Obviously you don't want to put any more friction within the journey, but again, if it's that more touch point to try and understand where you're getting leads from or where you're getting clients from, I think that's a great investment to do. And as Mike says, just test and learn in terms of if it disrupts the onboarding flow or anything like that, then you can change it. But I think it's just a very helpful way to get some more color in terms of the activity. And the one last thing I'll just say on it, we are seeing incrementality, and I will probably get to it in a later question, but it's not Google or ChatGPT. It's actually both being used, right? And they perform very different tasks. It may change when AI mode comes into play, even more so, and there is that more conversational element to it. But right now, it's not a. You've seen the headlines: ChatGPT kills Google, which is not true, right? It's incrementality, and it's great for us as marketeers that we've got a broader selection. For 2 decades, it was Google, and now we can start to look at a much fuller picture of channels and tech that customers are using.
Yeah. I mean, out of interest, can you say anything about what the sort of intent is, or the ways in which people are using those platforms differently? Because I know, just off the top of my head, right, in the past 24 hours, I had this one moment where for the first time I was about to Google something, and then I went, actually, I think GPT will give a better answer to this. And it feels like sort of technical, more like high end. If I think about it from the point of, let's say, a financial company, right? What you're probably looking for is like more high intent traffic. So if I'm looking for someone who's, say, asking what is the best, I don't know, what is the best spreads broker or something like that, that's probably quite a good person to have. They understand what a spread is. If you can get in that list, it's probably quite a good conversion rate. Whereas if you're further down the funnel, I don't know how useful that is. But anyway, I'm kind of rambling. I guess my question is like, what are the two differences between those channels? And do you
Yeah.
think in some ways AI is better? Because from my point of view, if you were looking for someone who's, let's say, more sort of basically just higher intent traffic, it seems like would go towards AI, but I could be wrong, right? I don't know if that's the case.
Well, I think I'll quickly talk about, I guess, what, from my experience of running marketing teams, what I saw change in the user journey. So how I saw people using the two platforms together, and how that manifested itself in, I guess, our end attribution, and therefore what I think marketers will be seeing more generally. I'll then maybe let Andy talk about, I guess, the difference between the two platforms and consumer behavior within the platforms, and how they're using it to take different actions. But what we were finding is, and I think we talked about this before, no one is clicking out of LLMs and AI search into brands' websites. So people are using LLMs to research, to discover information, to discover brands, to discover products. But they're then going direct to the website itself, direct to the brand itself, or using a branded Google search to get to the end product they're looking for. And so when it comes to attribution, the markets and the products where we were successful in boosting our visibility through AI search, what we as marketeers were seeing on the attribution side was more and more direct traffic, more and more branded organic search traffic, which we couldn't tie directly back to AI search, but coincided with a growth in our visibility in AI search and a growth in the use of AI search. What's really interesting, and it kind of comes back to Andy's point on AI search not cannibalizing Google, is that those were actually incremental customers. So it wasn't like we were seeing a reduction in customers coming through other channels. We were seeing an overall growth in customers because more people were discovering more products in more ways through AI search that they just might not have discovered before. So I find that super interesting. One, that the growth is coming through people not clicking within the LLMs and therefore not being attributed to the LLMs, but coming directly to your website. But also, this is incremental growth. There are more people entering categories because they're discovering products that maybe weren't relevant to them before as they use LLMs. So again, Andy and I both worked in fintech. Let's take that fintech example, or the trading example. If you were to Google how to make more money or have a second income, it's very unlikely that Google's going to push you down in the traditional SEO sense, trading as a potential route for a second income or to make more money. But the way that people engage with LLMs, which is more conversational, it builds on who you are and what it knows about you and your goals and what you shared over time. It could get to a place where it starts recommending trading to someone who wouldn't typically have been within the target market space for trading before. So I am seeing it as additive. I am seeing it as growing markets, especially for less mainstream products where discoverability and creating awareness and consideration of the product might have been difficult. So I find those things both super interesting.
Yeah. So as a follow up to that, I have two questions. So one is, if I think about it from the trading point of view, did that ever result in, let's say, reverse solicitation type traffic that would be good for you? Like let's say there's a market that's, like, off the top of my head, if I think, say, Brazil as a market that's arguably quite attractive, but you can only really take business there from on a reverse solicitation basis. Did you see stuff like that? And the second thing is, if I think of older marketing technology, like let's say something like Ahrefs, right? I think if you're a marketing agency, quite a lot of the time a customer might come to you and they'll go, okay, we want you to get our score in Ahrefs to sort of 99, something like that. Like that would be a way of benchmarking your success. but there might be other metrics attached to that, like, okay, you get this high score, but we also want to see an uplift to traffic of XYZ. And so because you don't have this click through, which is what you mentioned, right? Like, how is there basically a way to benchmark your success? So if I'm using the Obsero platform, and for someone watching or listening, right, one of the main things in this platform is that you look at queries that would be most relevant to your brand. So if you're a broker, it might be like, what's the best Forex broker in Italy, as an example, and how you're ranking in that for that query. Is there a way, like, let's say I'm hitting top 5 or I'm number 1 spot consistently for the queries that I want, given that you don't necessarily have the sort of the direct connection between being in that spot and the person coming to your website, is there a way that you can go, okay, I'm happy that this is working? Like this is, I can see that because of, okay, I'm ranking here, but also by looking at X, Y, Z, I can see that this is having a positive impact.
Yeah, so I think there's so many questions in there, but let's start with what can the platform do to help marketeers here? So what's interesting about AI search and prompt responses is that you don't get a traditional ranking that you do in the Google SERP. So in Google SERP, if you're the first domain that is appearing as someone searches organically for a term like best Forex broker in Italy, you are ranking number 1. And if you were the second domain that or brand that appears in the SERP, you're ranking number 2. It's very different with LLMs and prompt responses because yes, there's a hierarchy of who comes first, who comes second, who comes third, but there's also the sentiment around the brand. So it's not just do you appear, it's how do you appear and how does the LLM talk about your brand. So I get this example, you might search for best trainers, or I'm in America right now, best sneakers for running a marathon. And the prompt response might come back, Nike Vaporfly is number 1, and best if you're a professional athlete looking to run a sub 2:20 marathon, this is the shoe to go for. If you're looking for something cheaper and more durable and better on your knees and your joints, then go for the Hoka whatever. But we wouldn't recommend Under Armour because their shoes are more inclined to gym goers than they are to runners. Purely looking at rankings, you'd think, well, that's Nike 1, Hoka 2, and Under Armour 3, but actually the Under Armour prompt response isn't a positive one. It's not a mention they'd want in that scenario because it's a negative sentiment against their brand. So there's visibility is important, and in Obsero we track the visibility score for every brand that we work with across both category prompts and also brand prompts that they choose to track. And that's, I guess, your Ahrefs score that you talk about, kind of the 99 figure. Maximizing visibility score is going to be the primary objective of all of our clients. Visibility is super important. It's basically your reach metric, and that's going to be the number 1 thing to optimize to. But also, recommendation and sentiment is super important too. And part of the tool that we built summarizes on a trended basis not just what you're appearing, but also the sentiment across your brand. So what is the LLM talking about as it talks about your brand? What are the things that it says you do well? What are the things that it says you do less well, and why? Where is it getting the source of that information? Where is it citing that from? So we help brands understand, 1, how to boost their visibility and get that score higher, but as importantly, how to improve their sentiment. So if you as a marketeer, imagine I'm the marketeer for Hoka, and I'm really keen to grow my marathon running customer segment. I'm going to be really excited about getting myself from 2 to 1 for that ranking or that prompt response. But I'm also going to want not just to be there for the durable, good on your joints running shoe. I want my Hoka A to be showing up for this, but I want my Hoka B to be showing up for. And if you are an advanced runner who wants to run a quick marathon, we have an option for you here too. So it's not just about visibility. It's not just about appearing first. It's a lot about the sentiment within your brand and against your brand, and a lot of that comes from the citations and the data that the LLMs pull from the likes of Reddit, affiliate sites, review sites, as well as a small amount coming from your own content as well.
And I would add also with Obsero, when we defined what we wanted to build, we realized that from the 20 years previous, we had obviously the 10 blue links, the monolithic view. It would change by location, for example, restaurants, best restaurants near me, all of this that you would have.
Yeah.
But with LLMs, the memory and personas is crucial. And Mike and I have really worked on making sure that we are able to build out personas within Obsero and ensure that we are mirroring what an ICP, ideal customer profile, of the clients that come on board would actually see. Because like I said, I'm a little older than you two, but like my running shoes might be slightly different to what you guys would get, and it's essential to try and understand that and to get your customers like data into the platform as well. So again, we didn't want to just have a one rule fits all approach with it, and we're trying to amalgamate this within it too.
Yeah, so that's actually something I've not looked at that much, which is like, for example, I've noticed in the past, so let's say 3 months, and I don't know if it's from updates or something else, that a lot of when I make a query, a lot of the time it's almost like it knows me, you know, and it really tailors responses in sometimes in a way that's kind of creepy, actually. But like, if you're making this kind of product, right, like if you're on Google search traditionally, and I'm in London, I search best restaurant near me. The level of nuance there is not that great. Like, it's going to be fairly universal no matter your profile, right? You know, if my neighbor who is 20 years older than me is not going to get a different feedback on that request on Google, but they might get a completely different one, or will they? I don't know. That's the question on GPT if they were asking about, I don't know, like you said, trainers or financial products or like literally any consumer product, right?
Yeah, this is the thing now. Like we've also got a world where you've got Perplexity that has launched Comet, so it's got a brand new browser that will have Perplexity built into it. You've got a Claude extension for Chrome browser that was released today, so released this week. So all of a sudden, you are connected constantly to your LLM, and it is learning even more about you and your behaviors. We've seen ChatGPT roll out agent mode as well that will allow you to go off and do your car insurance without you having to do anything.
And surely Gemini is the most intimidating when it comes to that, because Google, yeah, naturally has so much data on all of us.
Yeah.
And I was out with a former colleague for a drink last night, and he's got the latest Google Pixel phone, and obviously that's got Gemini built into it, and so everything, all the metadata on his phone is now part of his profile as well. And Gemini is using all of this to tailor responses to his prompts when he uses Gemini and interacts with that platform. So that makes it so different from traditional search. And to Andy's point, so important that within Obsero and within AI search intelligence, there is no one size fits all. You really have to be clear on, from an ICP standpoint, who is it you want to be appealing to, and what are they seeing? Because if I'm going to use the running example again, if you are Nike and you are keen to get your Vaporflies off the shelf with your marathon runners, you're probably less worried about your couch to 5K kind of person who, again, ChatGPT knows that they're in the couch to 5K stage because they probably research couch to 5K. You're less fussed about them seeing your product when they go searching for best running shoe to buy, because the Vaporfly is not built for someone who's going for the first 1K run and then 1K walk. So being really clear as a brand, and most marketeers, all good marketeers should do this, being clear on who your target segment is, who is it you expect to and want to appear for and appeal to, being clear on that and sharing that with Obsero and us sharing it with the API to ensure that you're getting prompt response data that's relevant to your segment is super important, because it's not like the old Google days where everyone sees the same thing. It's so tailored, so personalized that brands need to be even clearer now than they ever have been about who is our target customer, who are we building for, and ensuring that they're then building an AI search strategy that tailors to that customer, not to the generic.
So, I mean, probably there's a level of secret sauce here, but can you say anything about how you're doing that, right? So, like, let's say that you're working with, again, I'm defaulting to it because it's going to be most people who are watching, but let's say you're working with CFD, spread bet type brokers, Let's say you're working with XTB, just for example, right? Like how do you make sure that the prompts that you're analyzing for them, let's say they want you to cover like Poland, UK, Chile, like just as examples. How do you make sure that the kind of prompts that are showing up are actually the kind of, I guess, people that they would want to be hitting, if that makes sense? Like,
Yeah,
because
but I think
if I could give a different example of what I mean, like I recently searched probably a month ago something about prop firms, and it gave back this answer which was like insanely cynical and negative, and I don't know what that says about me, but I think that definitely was tailored to stuff I'd said, and so I'm like, if it's that sort of nuanced, how do you actually get, I guess, a good idea of what people really are seeing, if that makes sense?
yeah, I guess there's two parts to that. One is technically how do we make this work, and the second is there are 7 billion people in the world. Each person's an individual. ChatGPT or any AI search platform will give them all an individual response. How do we capture them all? I guess to go to the second one first. We don't have 7 billion different ICPs built into our platform. That would be excessive at any stage of our growth, and definitely on launch day. However, we do give brands the ability to build in multiple ICPs to be able to track different profiles of different segments of customers. It's on the brand to define how many and how they define that customer segment. And I won't go into detail on the back end how we make that operate, but by defining the ICP and defining the segment within our platform, we ensure that when we're running the prompts in these AI search platforms, we are pulling back the prompt response that someone would get who was within that segment. So we're not going to run 7 billion segments. We're not going to make this an individual thing for each person. However, if brands understand who they're building for and the different segments that exist within the category, they can understand the different responses different segments would get for the same prompt. That's the platform side. And what's the second question?
I think it's just broadly like how, given that this nuance exists, like how as a brand do you make sure that you're, like if I'm using Obsero as a platform, how do I actually know that like it's giving me a good idea that the queries that I'm analyzing in the platform are actually the same ones that would be showing up for the customer that I really want? But I think to some extent you already answered that. Yeah.
No, but look, this is going to be something that we would work with brands on the consultancy stage, right? So there isn't for those obviously in performance marketing with Google Keyword Planner, you put in CFD trading and it tells you the old school way of this is how many searches per region, right? You don't have that, and it's not something that ChatGPT is given or Google at this moment in time. But you can look at, there's obviously been Grok that has indexed in Google a number of user prompts, which is a great way to research in terms of the length, what type of topics, how people are asking certain things. You've got people also ask in Google as well. There are some useful tools that you can extract some of these questions, and there is a really good tool as well that can look at, it's called alsoasked.com. You can extract like a conversation over time, so you can see what the most likely conversation would be within that. That's another area. I'm also, and I know this is a much like broader topic, but with UX and user research, if we're having an AI search strategy, you need to involve user research as well. Have some qual research, see how people are interacting with ChatGPT. In the example we were using, like advanced trader, beginner trader, like spread bet, like all of these things, and see how they would interact, whether it be for new client, for comparing brokers, for trading strategies, and then you can start to map and get a bit more intelligence and understanding of it. And the last tip, in Google Search Console, again, for those people that are in the like SEO world, you can do some regex work to understand what queries people are landing on your site that could be generated through AI. I'd cover a lot of this stuff in my newsletter, so shameless plug, which I'm sure David wouldn't mind linking to in his ask or in the description. So as a good SEO traditionally, obviously asking for a link. So
Yeah, no, I actually do recommend reading it. It's given me a couple of good tips actually in the last month. So, and I'm not just saying that.
yeah,
Yeah, but like, so that's actually a good segue into a couple of other questions I have, which is like, obviously, a lot of people in the SEO space will have some good technical understanding of what makes the site good, right? Like, load time, structuring data nicely, just kind of basic stuff like that. I mean, is there an equivalent? Do we have any kind of information or data on what the equivalent of that is for LLM so far?
yeah. So I would, first of all, a lot of it can be built on fantastic SEO foundations, right? So if I say you need a fast, accessible site, like that would work for SEO and it also works for GEO. Mike has talked about the citations, which is crucial. But again, you could say that was digital PR, but now it's really focused in terms of that, in terms of if you want to get mentioned there, you need to understand what are the top type of sites that are being returned, whether it be Wikipedia, Reddit, YouTube. They're key ones. I mean, they're probably not, they're pretty obvious. But again, investing more in video content, especially within the space that you're talking about, there's so much opportunity to do this across TikTok, YouTube. So citations is crucial, and Obsero allows you to understand for certain prompts which ones are being cited the most, and then you can try and influence those. The other tip as well is you've got ChatGPT, Claude that will not see content that is rendered after using JavaScript. So again, if you've got main content that's on the site, you need to make sure it's in the HTML and not reliant on JavaScript, right? So again, that can be something to look at too. I check your logs as well from the technical SEO side, and seeing in terms of how often bots are crawling. I wouldn't worry at all about LLM.txt, which is something that gets banded about on LinkedIn as something that's a really important thing. So again, I wouldn't worry about that, and might be adopted in the future. But for right now, where me and Mike build this, it's for the here and now, and then we will accelerate should changes happen. But and then the last point I'd just say is about structuring content on the page. This again is great SEO to do it. Like you have clear heading set up, header 1, header 2. You have internal links. You have a multimedia approach on the page. If you don't want a big wall of text, right? So that is a complete no-no, and you shouldn't do it anyway from a user perspective. But how LLMs will extract passages from the page is crucial, as opposed to just looking at the overall document. So yeah, there's a couple of things in there, but without something like Obsero, you can't see how you're tracking against those prompts. So
I think the one that I find most startling in terms of the difference between SEO and GEO, and I completely echo Andy's point, there's a lot of overlap here. So a strong SEO foundations will provide the jumping board to go from SEO to GEO. The thing that I think is startlingly different is, one, the use of third-party citations or third-party websites citations as deciding factor in recommendations than LLMs. Like Google historically used a lot of first-party content, own content, your own website content to find and recommend information. The LLMs are using so many more third-party sites than Google would be, and so super important to think about that third-party universe within your category, whether that's affiliates, review sites, trade-specific publishers like TradeInformer, and how you can show up there and be visible there and be part of the conversation there. Not just be visible, but with the right sentiment around your brand. The second thing is, which is huge, is Reddit. Reddit, especially for ChatGPT, is just a massive source of information and citations. And brands can be part of the conversations on Reddit. Forum seeding has for a long time has been a tactic. You asked earlier about kind of the non-regulated parts of geographically the non-regulated parts of the industry. Forum seeding has long been a tactic to grow in markets where you can't advertise. It's probably been the dirty end of marketing, but it's been a part of a strategy for some businesses for some time.
Yeah.
To me, it's now an essential part of an AI search strategy is to be visible and present on Reddit, not to promote your business, but to answer questions and help customers. If Reddit doesn't understand your business, if customers on Reddit don't understand your business and don't understand your offering, then the LLMs won't understand your offering. So you don't need to be evangelizing, promoting, advertising, lying, or selling. What you do need to be is present, and similar to things like Trustpilot or Google reviews, where brands should be replying to reviews and engaging with customers. It's the same on Reddit, and that's something I think a lot of brands haven't done historically, but those that are doing that, we're seeing from the data in Obsero, those that are doing that are winning, because it's such an important source of authority for LLMs.
I think that's a great point as well. Just to finish off as well with that, like traditionally, it was very much you'd look at your own website, maybe some of your own assets. Obviously, links are crucial in terms of the growth for organic, but now it's the full ecosystem. And how are you positioned on Trustpilot that all of a sudden becomes a huge part of the GEO world? How are you doing for like your app store reviews and things like this that would get mentioned elsewhere? So I think where it was quite maybe siloed before, now it's a lot broader in terms of looking at your optimization everywhere kind of approach.
Yeah, I wonder if that will make Reddit, because I feel like they probably used Reddit as it's more impartial, and now it's just going to destroy Reddit as well. As all the SEO people going on there, but GEO people going on there.
Yeah, so I'd just like to add as well, like with the Reddit thing, because that gets bandied about quite a lot as well. Like post more on Reddit, which is essential. Right, it's a huge site. It's got a ton of user engagement. It's got some great content on there as well, which is helpful. But I don't think it's as easy for a brand just to start posting straight away, because they'll see straight through you. They'll see you're selling something. But as Mike said, if you are passionate about the subject you are talking about and you have genuine, helpful advice that you can give and that you can contribute towards, then definitely invest in Reddit as a platform. Maybe a new hire community manager sits in PR, like that's kind of the direction that I would take. But yeah, for me, it wouldn't be just a hackable, just first post and you're selling yourself for it. So
yeah, they'll hack it anyway.
yeah,
I'm going to try and hack it anyway. But, okay. The next question is so related to that, right? Like, so something we've touched on quite a lot in this conversation is the fact that marketeers for a long time now have had loads of data. One part of that is obviously sort of like search volumes. If you, even on a really basic level, right? If you want to just get a quick idea of what people are looking for, if you just type, best Italian restaurant, blah, 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 and it's going to continue show you the suggested queries. I mean, ChatGPT has started doing that a bit, but it seems not very good, to be honest. And otherwise, there doesn't really seem to be that much data there. So do you see that changing? I mean, do you think that they are going to go down the sort of Google route, which, obviously Google was not originally like such an advertising heavy business and then ended up pivoting towards that? And before that happens, I mean, is there any way that you can sort of get an idea of queries, what people are looking for? I mean, just like off the top of my head, maybe you see something in drop off a lot in Google keyword volumes, but maybe there's no downturn in traffic. I don't know, something like that. Are those the sorts of things you're saying?
Do you want to? Let me just think about. So sorry, we have to. Let me just think. What was the?
Well, I'll start by saying something, and then you can maybe say some more stuff. So when you look at the AI search space, David, the one piece that everyone is battling with just now is prompt volumes. So if you look at traditional SEO and Google search volumes, whilst they're not 100% transparent, they're pretty easy to work out either from Keyword Planner or from other tools like Search Console. There is nothing that exists just now from any of the AI search platforms to help consumers or marketers or brands understand prompt volumes. It's very intangible at this point, and um, so ourselves and other AI intelligence platforms are resorting to estimating prompt volumes. I think it's a super important metric to understand, because as a marketer, you want to tackle the biggest fish first. And if you don't know where the prompt volumes exist, you don't know which prompts to be focusing on optimizing for. So it is an important metric, but it's not one that anyone knows, and anyone that claims they know it is lying. There is no way to factually state prompt volumes for any prompt, for any segment, for any country, for any category. It just isn't a reported metric. But we are working on a model to estimate it using a number of different data sources, including query volumes from search, from Google search, but also using some of the tools that Andy talked about earlier around understanding queries that come off prompts, and also using some panel data. So there are ways to estimate it, but it is, of all of the traditional search metrics that you might want to see as a marketer, it is the one that is most opaque. And I do think that'll change over time. I 100% think that in time, these platforms will start to provide tools to help brands and marketers understand how consumers are engaging with their platforms, because it's a quid pro quo, everyone wins from that situation. But if I look at an OpenAI, they're far more worried about adding more capacity, more data centers, improving the models and improving the front end for consumers than they are worrying about brands at this point. So I think it's unsurprising they've not gone there yet, because it's very much a consumer-facing business with, I'm sure, a very busy product roadmap for that business on the back end and the front end. But I'd be stunned if in 24 months' time we don't have some tools to help marketers understand prompt volume. But for just now, we'll be estimating it. We'll be helping brands estimate those figures for those prompts, just like everyone else is.
Yeah. And as a follow-up to that, right, I think something that I find interesting is just the fact that if you look at, say, most, let's say, I would say traditional, I don't know if traditional is the right word, but like a lot of SEO sites have been set up specifically in the trading sector. It's the same in iGaming as well, right? There's so many websites that are geared to have, say, like best stockbroker in the UK, and you Google search that. They're amazing at hitting the first spot. The user clicks through. You then have that attribution. You can do quite an easy CPA agreement. This kind of flips this things on its head, right? Where if you are not getting any click through, but you are getting the visibility, you lose the CPA agreement. So, like, is that changing, or did you see that change how you were having to work with those sorts of websites? Because they feel like such a big part of so many industries, right? Obviously, not just trading.
Yeah, I mean, I was saying that in my last couple of years working within the performance marketing space, was actually for the majority of our what would be traditionally be affiliate partners. Sorry, the line's getting blurry between media owner, affiliate partner, and influencer. There's just, it was really quite clean cut before. It's very messy now. And where it was clean cut was that basically you sorted them by how you paid them. So a media owner, you're paying based on a CPM and impression basis. An affiliate, you're paying CPA, and an influencer, you're paying per post. So influencer, you're buying reach on a post basis. Affiliate, you're buying clicks, and media, you're buying eyeballs and impressions. We started to find that actually we were sometimes paying one publisher a CPM deal for parts of their site, a CPA deal for parts of their site, and then a fixed fee for general visibility across the site. And I do think that's probably the way we're going to be going, because these sites will provide multiple benefits to brokers. Visibility, even without a click, is important. So even, on-site visibility is super important. People might take that recommendation of, let's use my alumni IG. IG is number one broker. You might not click through direct from site to IG. You might go to IG.com, but that visibility is super important. I think there's a cost to pay for that. There's a cost to pay for the click. But also now, especially in this world of AI search, where those third-party review sites are being used as key citations for recommendations and LLMs, it's even more of a reason for them to be demanding and non-performance related payment for the visibility they're offering. And again, I expect those businesses to be using Obsero to understand their role within visibility. So, if you are a top cited review site, knowing that is a super important thing when you come to negotiate with your buyers, because you can point to it and say, look, when someone's searching for top broker in the UK, Reddit is source number one, and my site is source number two, and here's all the not just my domain, but also the individual pages within my website that are being used as citations to drive this ranking. That's worth something to a brand. I mean, it should be worth something to a brand. So there's, on both the buy and the sell side, there's a role for understanding citations to play. But I'd be stunned if that I guess media buying landscape doesn't keep evolving for review sites to use citations as a means to dictate their value to brands, and ultimately to sell, as they have done for years, sell rankings in sometimes the highest bidder.
Yeah. And out of interest, have you seen sites tank in the same way that they do on Google, right? So I think a common thing is like, and again, this could potentially change the sort of relationship, right? Where like in the past, if I have a review site or whatever it is, there's a Google update, it tanks, I'm being paid on a CPA basis. So my motivation is to get back to number one as quickly as possible. If that flips and then I've made some agreement to pay this site like a huge amount of money because they're ranking well, and then they tank in an LLM, I'm now kind of on the hook for that. So are sites tanking in LLMs? Is that a phenomenon? And like, how do you manage that if it is?
So
I wouldn't say tanking, but there's huge volatility around, a huge variability in how these responses change over time.
yeah, so the algorithms that probably the teams are accustomed to, like core updates or helpful content update or spam updates in Google, you're not going to see it tank as the way you would there, where you see like loads of rankings drop and then traffic decline. Obviously, with Google's link, I think it's the study, most recent one by Ahrefs, was I think 74% of AIO listings come from the page one results, right? So there's going to be a link there if you start to see if you're affected by an algorithm update. Now, the one thing that me and Mike talk a lot about is obviously grounded and ungrounded. So ungrounded in terms of LLM data is the training data that was used, whereas grounded is the real-time like data that you would go and search for certain things. So if you search for which country are the pyramids in, it'll probably be an ungrounded one, because it knows the answer based on training data, so it will come in there. But if you're asking a certain like topical news question or something about Trump, then it's pretty confident it doesn't know the answer based on the training data, so it will have to go towards that. And that's key in terms of the organic growth side of things, because it has to go to a source. So ChatGPT would go to Bing previously, but we've started to see it shift across to Google as well. So, and why wouldn't it? It's the obviously the most used search engine, the biggest index. So that will have an impact that you have, because if you've got a prompt and you put it for what's the latest on Trump's tariffs, and what the LLM will do is it will do a query fan out, which will split that into many different prompts that will then go off and try and find this information. So really, if you're not there in search and it's done that type of search itself, the grounded one, then yeah, you're going to be in trouble that way as well. So yeah, it is different from like we're rolling out this algorithm, we're going to see, and then you see everything drop or go up. It's not going to be like that. But yeah, you have to make sure that you're still focusing on that organic search side as well.
Yeah. Now, one of the things I actually noticed this week specifically, like literally 2 days ago, is that it's ChatGPT anyway has started to really pick up news much more quickly. I don't know if that's like it's always done that, but that's my impression, that it's getting much better at identifying stuff that's on page one. So if you use the Trump example, right, what's the latest on Trump tariffs? My impression is that, say, 12 months ago, it would kind of pick things up that were like a couple of days old, whereas now it's literally picking things up that, if you were doing the equivalent Google search, it would be like appearing in the little news box, one of those kinds of results, which I found I feel like that would be such a big game changer, right? Like it would.
And it's a big change with GPT-5, right? So if you look at a lot of the GPTs prior to now, it was evolving the model that sat on top of the training data to provide better ungrounded responses. But I think I think what some people were disappointed about with GPT-5 is it didn't actually see a lot of improvement in terms of the model's ability to interpret the training data better. But where it has got a lot better is the way that it references user search to reference live data or live content to provide better answers about the here and the now, which completely agree with you in what you're saying in the usability of GPT now versus 3-6 months ago, where it just feels way more current, present, real time, engaging.
It's the irony really is that ChatGPT is now scraping Google for content, which Google has done for many years. So yes, long may it continue.
Yeah, yeah. But I saw that and was thinking that it's really like a huge change because going back to say using different platforms for different reasons. I feel like until now I've kind of used Google still. If you wanted to see what was going on right now, I would still use Google. But if I could just find out that information in GPT, I might switch to it, which is, I don't know, that's a crazy thing to happen, right? I think that's such a big change. But yeah,
and what we're
yeah,
it's a bit of a tangent, but we're actually seeing that each of the GPTs are starting to build their own niche of where they excel, and they've almost got their own perfect use case. So, Claude, I think, is becoming the GPT of source for developers and engineers, like incredible coding platform. That's where engineers are going. Gemini, incredible for video and asset creation. I think, there's doing some really cool stuff there. And so for marketeers, I think Gemini is becoming a go-to for, it's like video, image, all that good stuff. And where ChatGPT is winning is on brand. It's almost to crypto what Bitcoin is. It's the first, it's the biggest, it's the best known, and so it's very much playing the consumer card, which is for the general consumer, for the day-to-day individual, ChatGPT is winning. But it's really interesting the other LLMs because I think they know they've not got first mover advantage. They know they're not going to win just by brand. Maybe not Google because of Google, but you look at Grok, you look at Perplexity, you look at Claude. They're having to find niches where their LLM really outperforms, and I think it's going to be super interesting to see how those niches or specific use cases evolve over time to become more specialized. And I think everyone thought ChatGPT and maybe one other would win the race. There's one Google and there's Bing on the side. I don't think that's the case. I think they'll actually develop their products to fill different user needs, which I think is super clever. I think it's amazing the way they've done that, and kudos to their product teams.
Yeah, I think part of it is actually just the UX, right? When you go on GPT, it's like the Xness of LLMs. It's like it's so simple. You just immediately get in there. Whereas I was trying to use Grok the other day for the second or third time, it's just kind of clunky and like you have to be on X or maybe you don't. I don't know, but yeah. Anyway, so like to finish off, right? I think we sort of touched on this throughout, but like I think ultimately the product you're making is sort of addressing what I kind of see as like a genuine sea change, right? I think the internet is almost like the invention of the last 20, 30 years, completely changed the world. I really feel like this may genuinely be on a par with it, and it at a minimum has already completely changed how we use the internet. I was at a friend's drinks thing in July, and there was someone from Google there, and he was basically saying he thinks that the age of the internet, or as it has existed for say 20, 25 years, is what I think. Well, he used the phrase "open internet," which apparently is a phrase. I don't think I'd heard it before, but the general concept, right, is like you go on a search engine, you look for information. It's relatively straightforward to find that information. You feel like it's kind of impartial. And there's this sort of relationship between Google, the search engine, and advertisers and publishers, and there's sort of a loop between those things. And what he was saying is he just feels like the internet is moving towards more of a closed network, right? So you have sort of platforms, like you have Google AI, you have ChatGPT, you have Facebook, you have Instagram, you have TikTok. And I see this in, say, again, and I'm referencing it because most people watching it are in this industry, but I see it in something like the broker space, where I think there's now a lot of affiliates who are just focusing on, say, YouTube or TikTok, and they're just really trying to hit those kind of platforms, because it's almost like there's no point. I don't say there's no point, but like it's going to become more and more difficult to have the sort of website that you could, 5-10 years ago, with just like, here's the best broker, right? And like, on the other hand, that kind of the incentive structure that creates, where if you have to write if you're someone who was creating a website, writing content, that was sort of the way people found information about a third-party company. The incentive to that kind of disappears to some extent, right? Because like, if I'm a publisher, for example, I'm just not being rewarded for creating content. It's a bit like, well, what's the point? I'm just not going to do it. But if they're not doing that, then it sort of makes a platform like yours, I don't want to say it's redundant, but it's like, it's kind of like, well, if people are just not going to create content and everything becomes very siloed, how relevant does, say, search become? And then what's the point of creating? Do you see what I mean? Like, it's almost like, what's the point in content?
I mean, I disagree with that kind of comment. The internet is dying. I think that's a bit of a strongly and pretty articulated view in my mind. But I get the point, which is, and we're seeing this come out in courts across the world just now, where you've got Wall Street Journal, I think, was suing OpenAI for using their content illegally. And where I do agree is that the economics of the internet are going to have to change, because previously the economics of the internet were, as you say, you create content, and that content is discovered directly by consumers, and consumers use that content to make decisions on purchasing. As consumers are making their purchase decisions somewhere else, how predominantly publishers are rewarded for creating that content. I think for brands this is less important. It's still worth having your website, maintaining its low cost, and it's important as an information source. But for third-party publishers, media owners, I do agree that the model has to change for remuneration, because you're not going to get people. Let's take the news example we talked about earlier. If you can go and find news on ChatGPT without paying for it, rather than subscribing to the Telegraph, or the Guardian, the Wall Street Journal, whatever your publication of choice is, you're going to do that because it's a win-win. But if the LLMs aren't paying for that information, then the model dies somewhere. I've no idea where it's going to end up. Probably numerous court battles across numerous countries with numerous plaintiffs across it. But these models don't work without content, and so we're not going to get to a position where the open internet and content within the web just disappears, because it's in everyone's favor for high quality content to continue to be created by independent third-party brands or independent third-party publishers to inform these LLMs and make them as high quality as they can be. But the economics are going to change. And again, we talked about this earlier with how brands pay partner sites. That's evolving to reflect the fact that they're doing more than just generating a click-through on site. They're now providing the source recommendations. That to me is a perfect example of how the economics of the internet are evolving to reflect the fact that the way that consumers find information on the internet is evolving. But I think there's more to come. Where that leaves me in terms of Obsero, it makes it more and more relevant, because Obsero just exists to demonstrate and to help marketeers understand their visibility within AI search. Unless you think AI search is going away, then Obsero doesn't go away. It becomes super important. But I think what is going to change is how AI search and how LLMs capture the data that sits on the internet, capture the content that sits on the internet, and remunerate the people that created that content, because it doesn't quite work today. It will have to change. I have no idea how it's going to change. But I think it's in everyone's interest for AI search to continue to grow as a product. It's just currently in some people's interest more than others financially, and that's the bit that's probably got to be righted.
Yeah, just to add, so I do think it depends on the type of content that's being produced, right? I think we're all fed up with recipes that go through a life story and all of this stuff just to rank and try and get clicks, right? So there's probably that's going away. Now, I think there's so much that's coming. Like we were talking about agent to agent. Like if you still are a brand, if you're Gymshark or something, and somebody's searching the LLM for certain products that you're the fact is that somebody, the brand has actually done some above the line campaigns. They've seen it. This person loves Gymshark. It's part of their profile, and then it goes out. You will still need to know how it's being returned and how it's interacting with things. So I think it becomes even more like essential. Don't get me wrong. I know how frustrating it probably is for publishers. Like in the week, we saw Daily Mail like knocked Google because traffic was down 89%, like because of AIOs that are there. But then again, it's you look at the model that you've got, and if you've just relied on traffic just for ad revenue over the years, like that is going. You have to change, and you've seen obviously subscriptions. Mike talked about Wall Street Journal, New York Times, FT, like that people want to pay for this content. And I think that's kind of the essential part of it. It's the diversification of what you do, emails, YouTube videos, and then, but you could be smart as well with it. That using AI, you've got videos that you can do, get a transcript, create some content around it. It speeds up the time for what you're doing, and just make sure that you're delivering useful information and quality for your audience that you define.
Yeah, no, I think I feel like it can go one of two ways, and maybe will, which is like, on the one hand, you have the kind of AI slop machine of just churn loads and loads and loads of stuff out.
Yeah.
Or on the other hand, it almost kills that kind of model, and actually you get to more walled garden type scenario, but actually the quality is higher. But maybe both will happen simultaneously. I don't know. Anyway, thanks guys so much for doing this. It was really, really good to talk. I feel like I took a lot of your time. If you are interested in the product, it's Obsero, so Obsero.ai, and reach out to Mike or Andy. I'm sure they'd be happy to show you the product. I've seen it. It is really good. So yeah, thanks guys, and good luck with it.
Thanks, David.
Fabulous, David. Take care.